Have you ever watched a really great film only to find out that that was that director's first film? I think I can speak for all of us filmmakers out there that that can be a pretty daunting realization. When you find out that Boogie Nights was made by a 26-year-old or Whiplash by a 28-year-old, you kind of start to question your life decisions. Today, I would like to talk about some of my favorite directorial debuts. Let me just say, I haven't seen Backrooms yet. I'm going to fix that soon, alright? I'll probably make a separate video on that, but I'm sure it's impressive that that was made by, Jesus, he was 16. What the am I doing with my life? Oh, he was 20 when he made the film. Oh, well, that's nothing. I could have done that. The first time I saw Whiplash, I was 15 years old, and back then it was pretty much my Bible for success. I agreed with everything Andrew said in that dinner scene.
I'd rather die drunk, broke at 34 and have people at a dinner table talk about me than live to be rich and sober at 90 and nobody remember who I was.
The idea of living on through your art was like the single most important goal of my life back then. I've seen it 4 times now, and I feel like the older I get, the more I become like Andrew's dad.
You get to be my age. You get perspective.
I don't want perspective.
I am absolutely convinced that every decision Terence Fletcher makes throughout this film is perfectly calculated and part of some big master plan. The most obvious example of this is the scene where Andrew loses the folder. There's a whole video made on this topic, and I'll link to it here. But basically, I agree that Terence Fletcher stole the folder, and that's just one of the many times throughout the film where he puts his entire career on the line just because he has a firm belief that Andrew has the potential to become one of the greats. I always got the impression that he is some demon disguised as a jazz conductor, and that he's come down to earth to forge the next Charlie Parker with whatever means necessary. And it's almost like he's constantly on the verge of losing this disguise. Like, if he got a little too angry, his eyes would turn red and devil horns would come growing out of his head. I still can't believe those final 15 minutes of the film. The entirety of the film is shot in a pretty mediocre way, except for the drumming sequences, which were pretty much great from the start. But it's in those final 15 minutes where you feel like you're watching one of the greatest filmmakers pour his heart out. In his own way, Damien Chazelle played the best solo the world has ever seen. I don't think a horror film has traumatized me this much since ever. This film doesn't give you a second to breathe. It's just pure adrenaline for the entire runtime, to the extent that when I walked out the theater, my heart was still beating for hours after. As you've probably heard by now, Indy Navarrete is the highlight of this film. Certainly one of the greatest performances I have seen in a horror film. Everything she does here is purposeful and motivated by the scene. It's not just a bunch of eye-catching facial expressions and screams. Even early on in the film, before she has turned into this obsessive, toxic girlfriend, these micro-expressions tell us that she probably likes Bear already. Only after skipping through the film a second time did I realize that Ian was totally trying to set Bear off on the wrong track when it comes to dating Nikki, telling him that she's not into any of this sensitive stuff and that he should mention freaky Nikki. Either that or Ian is just not equipped to be sensitive around Nikki. She does mention that Bear is the only one that she can talk to the way they talk. I love the way that Curry Barker uses fore and background to create suspense. It's such an obvious thing, right? I mean, fore and background is like one of the most basic tools that a filmmaker has, and yet you don't really see it being used in a smart way in most horror films, or most films in general. Whenever Bear was sitting in a car and you could look through the window behind him, you anticipated the entire time that something was going to happen. Sometimes it does, but also sometimes it doesn't, and you're always on the edge of your seat. Since seeing this film, I have never listened to Under Pressure the same way again. I'm not gonna spoil, but if you've seen the film, you know what I'm talking about. I used to go on Turkey vacations with my family, and to this day, I have these vivid, almost paradisical memories of lying by the pool by day, watching live performances by night, or making a friend, if only for that 1 week. Charlotte Wells beautifully portrays that otherworldly feeling in a way that makes me want to jump through the screen and exist forever in this pale blue pocket of reality. The final shot of this movie is probably my favorite final shot out of any movie because it's brilliant in a way that only a film can be. You couldn't have done that. You couldn't have created that feeling, that emotion. You couldn't have had that effect on an audience in any other art form but film. I love the way this film combines found footage and live action. It's a rare example of found footage being used in a non-horror film, but it's still horrifying in its own way. The first time I saw this one, it didn't really sink in until the ending. I made the mistake of waiting for something to happen that would explain everything. But by the end, you realize that the whole film is this puzzle and it's up to you to piece it together. So if you haven't seen it yet, don't go in waiting for something to happen. Just, it's all in the journey. I have been fascinated by David Lynch's work, but probably more so fascinated by David Lynch, the person, for quite some time. I could watch videos of him talking about his love for the art life for days, how he dedicated his entire life to making art. Lynch started making this film when he was 24 years old, and he finished it around 29 years of age. Talking about the meaning of Eraserhead is kind of the most pretentious thing that you can do as a film buff, so I'm not going to do that, but I am going to tell you my personal interpretation of it, and it does seem to be the most universal interpretation of the film, which is that it's an extreme cautionary tale of becoming a parent. And one scene that has stuck with me ever since I first saw it is the woman standing on stage singing, "In heaven, everything is fine." The temptation of death or even suicide is a constant theme throughout the film. Lynch creates such a dense and unforgiving atmosphere that it really is hard to sit through. Now, Eraserhead really doesn't rank that high on my David Lynch ranking, but what's especially impressive about this being David Lynch's first feature-length film is that it's completely uncompromising in its vision. There's nothing like this on planet Earth. For someone to be this bold on the first film, where most directors spent their entire careers trying to figure out their own signature styles, David Lynch knew what he was doing from the get-go. Oh boy, this is a tough one. This is the saddest film I have ever seen. I can only watch it every couple of years, but maybe that's the right way to do it because I certainly think that this film is going to mean something different to me when I see it in my 40s opposed to seeing it in my 20s. Charlie Kaufman is one of my favorite screenwriters. He's written my current favorite film of all time. I'm a big fan of John Bryon's work, not just on this film, but also Eternal Sunshine, Punch Drunk Love, and even his collaborations with Mac Miller, who is also my favorite musician ever. Much like All That Jazz, this film is hard for me to watch because it pretty much deals with all the things that I try to avoid to think about every day of my life. Time slipping through your fingers, the inevitability of death. Yeah, it's not easy to even think about this film. Fills me with existential dread. Yeah, let's talk about something else. Can we cut? Can we just... As far as I'm concerned, this is the best romance about a love story that could have been, but due to the circumstances was just never quite meant to be. As someone who's had a little bit of experience with long-distance relationships that led nowhere, those Skype calls between Nora and Taesung really resonated with me. When they realized that they won't be able to see each other for at least another year, and Nora decides that it's best for them to stop talking for a while, I get it. When you think about someone every minute of every day, a year feels like an eternity. It has so much empathy for its characters. It doesn't really make you side with anyone. Of course, this is not the first time we have seen a film about this love triangle dynamic, but usually the current husband character, which in this case is Arthur, is the one that you root against. Because somehow a love story that started off in your childhood and has never quite gone away is more romantic than ending up with some American guy. I don't even know if I rooted for Hae-sung the first time or for Arthur. There's really not one I prefer over the other, but it's just unfair to Arthur because they are committed to each other. They're married. They've spent years together being a couple, whereas Nora and Hae-sung never had their shot. But that also makes you root for them because you kind of wonder maybe there was something there, maybe something more powerful than what Nora has with Arthur. Oh, you know what? I'm for Arthur. Arthur's my guy. All right, those are my favorite director debuts. Now I want you to go in the comments below and tell me your favorite director debuts. And yeah, that's it. I don't really have anything else to say. What do people say at the end of a video? Subscribe.